everyone. Remind that we record our sessions. We post our classes on YouTube. And we are back to the Spirit's book. And let me share here where we are. We are on question 1009, which is the last chapter of book 4, the nature of future atonements, under the chapter Future Joys and Sorrows. And on this question 1009, when we talk about the duration of future atonements, we have messages. We're talking about eternal expiations or eternal atonements. And we have messages from St. Augustine, St. Louis, Plato, and Lamennais that we already been through last week. And now the only one missing is a message from Paul the Apostle, or St. Paul, that we are going to be doing now. Just a reminder that we discussed at length the idea of eternal punishment as taught and understood by the church at that time, and still by many today, and the idea of using reason, the idea of taking be careful with the translations and all this. So let's see what Paul brings to us. Okay.
Start?
Yeah. Go ahead, Paco.
Gravitating towards divine union is the goal of humanity. 3 things are necessary to reach this goal: knowledge, love, and justice. 3 things conflict with this goal: ignorance, hatred, and injustice. You are untrue to these fundamental principles when you compromise the idea of God by exaggerating God's severity, therefore suggesting that the human being, God's creation, has more clemency, compassion, love, and true justice than you attribute to their Creator. You even destroy the very idea of hell and purgatory by making it as ridiculous and inadmissible, according to your beliefs, as is but your heart the disgusting spectacles of the Middle Ages with its torturers, executioners, and burnings at the stake. Do you hope to maintain it as an ideal model when you have eliminated the principle of blind retaliation forever from society's legislation? Brothers and sisters in God and Jesus Christ, believe me, you must either resign to letting all your doctrines perish at your own hands or modify them. You must revitalize them by opening them to the compassionate action like good spirits are now providing. The idea of hell, full of glowing furnaces and boiling cauldrons, might have been admissible during an iron century. In the 19th century, however, it is nothing more than empty images. They can scare young children, but these children are no longer frightened when they grow up. By persisting in this, by persisting in upholding this terrifying illusion, you generate skepticism, which is the root of every sort of social disorder. I shudder at witnessing the foundations of social order shaken and crumbling into dust due to the lack of an effective penal sanction. Let all who are driven by a vibrant and passionate faith, the advanced men and women of human enlightenment, join in their efforts to raise antiquated fables and resuscitate the idea of true penal sanctions in harmony with their values, traditions, and insights of your time. Who, in fact, is the guilty? It is the one who, by the soul's deviation from the right path, has veered from the true goal of creation, which consists of a harmonious worship of the beautiful and good, idealized by the human archetype, the man God through Jesus Christ. What is punishment? The natural consequence of that deviation, the amount of pain necessary to disgust the offender, and which caused his departure from what is right by experiencing the suffering caused by that deviation. Punishment is the stimulus that drives the soul through its affliction to turn towards itself and to return to the right path. The sole purpose of atonement is rehabilitation and emancipation, and to assume that it lasts forever would be to deny the reason for existence. Honestly, stop trying to establish a parallel of duration between good, the essence of the creator, and malevolence, the essence of the creature. This establishes groundless standard of retribution. On the contrary, confirm the gradual decrease of imperfections and atonements through successive lives until we reach the divine union by reconciling reason with compassion, Paul the Apostle.
Okay, so first, let's talk a little bit about Paul the Apostle, right? According to Divaldo Franco, the two main responsible for the survival and expansion of Christianity and for Christianity to exist the way to spread and exist the way it exists today is first of all Paul of Tarsus, or Paul the Apostle, and Mary Magdalene, or Mary of Magdala. Second, Paul. Why was Paul so important? For those that have read Paul and Stephen, which is mandatory reading for those that want to understand better about the origins of Christianity and Spiritism as a whole, we see that Paul was was a scholar in the Jewish community, and was prepared to be one of the top rabbis of the Jewish community in Jerusalem, and the first persecutor of Christians, or the followers of Christ. And he went so far as to ordering the killing of Stephen, who was one of the first disseminators of the teachings of Christ. And after he met Christ in the desert in Damascus, when he was going there to persecute Christians, and Christ and Jesus appears in front of him in the middle of the desert and asks him, "Why do you persecute me?" And then he understands that everything that he had been hearing was really true. And his answer to Jesus was, "How can I serve you, Master?" Which shows the grandeur of this man, that immediately recognizing his mistake, understood that the only way to repair the mistake was to fully serve the Master, to fully serve Jesus. So he goes on, and that starts the last 2/3 of the book is Paul's journey, first as Saul of Tarsus, then becoming Paul of Tarsus, to spread Christianity beyond the Jewish community. And that's what's really important. So two things helped him spread Christianity. First, that he had free enter into all Roman Empire because he was a Roman citizen. He spoke Greek, he spoke Aramaic, he spoke Latin. So he was able to be understood by everyone. And he understood through some fightings and discussions with the followers of Christ that were congregated in the mansion in the house of the way that Peter ran with James. James was very in favor of keeping the traditions of the Jewish people, and Paul was the opposite. And he went and spread Christianity to the Gentiles. And it was because of him that Christianity really survived. Probably the most important documents of old Christianity besides the Gospels are the letters that he wrote to the Corinthians, to the Hebrews, and to the Thessalonians. So Paul, he was a very strong, he's a very strong person. It is said that he reincarnated as Martin Luther, that broke with the church, but this is somewhat dubious. There is a book from a famous Brazilian writer, spiritist, that describes his incarnation as first as Paul and then as Martin Luther in the 1500s. So, you know, we can see by his text here that he's very strong on the necessity of three things: knowledge, love, and justice. Actually, in the original French, it's not knowledge, it's science. But in the end, science and knowledge, it can be used in the same way. But you know, one of the laws of Christ, actually the last one that we just studied, the moral laws, is the law of justice, love, and charity. And love and charity can be used as one and the same if we have different interpretations. And Jusara spoke about it on Sunday at the Gospel. But, you know, through Spiritism, we learn the need for knowledge. It's the intellectual evolution side. We have two wings of evolution. One is through the moral side, which is love, and the other through the knowledge, which is the intellectual side. And to balance both is what we can call justice, to balance our understanding of the relationships between human beings. And of course, the three things that conflict with this goal is ignorance, hatred, and injustice. And we have only to look around us nowadays in the world. Let's talk about the world as a whole, and we'll see many instances of ignorance, of hatred, and of injustice happening all around us. And that really creates problems for the world. So he told us, this is 160 years ago almost, the need to have knowledge, to learn more, to love one another, and to be kind and just. So then he goes on talking about us misinterpreting the understanding of God, saying very clearly that we are suggesting what? That we have more clemency, compassion, and love, and true justice than the Creator. That doesn't make sense, right? If we use our reason, we'll see that the Creator has to be all powerful, all just, and all love, because he has all the knowledge, all the love, and all the justice that is possible to have, that we will never reach. So if he has everything, he doesn't have any of the attributes we talk about our fellow beings, which is, you know, being unjust, being punishing. So the idea of hell and purgatory that we were making through the Middle Ages, as Paul says here, with torturers, executioners, and burnings at stake, they had disappeared almost already in the 19th century. And he said, you know, if we continue with this, what is going to happen is all the doctrines will perish at your own hands, or you have to modify them. He's already bringing the idea that we have to evolve with our knowledge, our understanding of ourselves, of the spiritual world, because if we get stuck in our old beliefs and our old traditions, we are going to lose more and more adherence to the doctrines that we are preaching, and that's exactly what more or less we see it happen, because we have a lot of people that are spiritual but do not follow any religion specifically, or even people that follow religions, they follow not fully following all what the religions tell them, but just what's more acceptable or convenient. So Paul is very clear here. All these ideas that we had in the past, they do not make any sense. The idea of hell, full of glowing furnaces and boiling cauldrons, we have to evolve, because otherwise we are generating skepticism, and with that, every sort of social disorder. And again, we still talk about today what's going on around us, and we see this happening around us, right? The social disorders that are generated by the lack of belief and of faith, of understanding. So, and then he goes on, who's really guilty? The one that has veered from the path, the true goal of creation, because of not understanding it. But how is it fair that the punishment will be a so severe punishment if the one that is making the error does not fully understand the need of following the right path? So when he talks about punishment, he says punishment here is the natural consequence of deviating from the natural law. And how much should we suffer? We should suffer enough to make us reflect and change our actions. Until we don't do that, until we understand the need to change, we're going to suffer, and there will be eternal suffering for those that are going through the suffering, because until they change the way they behave, the way they think, the way they act, they will be suffering the consequences of the mistakes. So punishment is the stimulus that drives the soul through the affliction and changes it to return to the right path. So very clearly here, the sole purpose of atonement is rehabilitation and emancipation. And to assume that it lasts forever would be to deny the reason for existing. It would be to deny everything that we believe, right? So, and here he ends by saying, stop trying to compare yourself with the Creator. You know, the Creator is eternal goodness, and the evil, as it says in the original, or malevolence, as it says here, is the essence of the creature. So as we evolve and we decrease our imperfections and we go through atonements, through successive lives, we'll reach the divine union by reconciling reason with compassion. Again, the two wings of evolution, the wing of knowledge and the wing of moral love and charity, which is compassion also. Okay? Comments here?
I just want to make a comment that, you know, the concept of punishment for us is always kind of negative. You know, you're going to suffer for that. You're going to pay for it. You know, with that's a payback. And here we learn that punishment is the natural consequence of our own conscience that's driving us back to rectify behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that.
Yeah, which is a very positive perception, or it's a very positive perfection. It's no longer the payback. Very good. It's quite.
And you know, it's interesting that if you read it, and if you read Paul's letters to the different Paul's letters, you see that the style and the strength of the words are very similar. It's really, you can really see that it's Paul writing here by the style and by the strength of the message. I thought I thought it was very interesting.
It's interesting. In self-help group, we have the slogan, okay, we're going to change when I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Danny.
Yeah, I have been thinking about that a lot, about this punishment. It brings a new light into it, but at the same time, I think I was trying to understand why we seem to be born with this inherent feeling, or that we don't deserve. Like,
very good.
As Paco was saying, there's so many literature available. Like, everywhere you look online, you might find some way of a language that reaches out to you to help you out, right? To get better, to become a better person, including Spiritism here. But there is always this baseline, is like, you need to believe that you deserve to be better, or you deserve the help, or you deserve to be happy, right? So I wondered if, because of we have been coming back so many times, going through trials and atonements, that it's so hard to let it go, that feeling, okay, I'm being punished, so, but in this life I have a new chance. But we bring back in the spirit, like in us, so many repetition of the mistakes, or trying again and trying again and trying again. And why is it so hard to believe that we deserve to be better, or deserve to be prosperous, or deserve, a happy life, the bright side of it?
Because it's been centuries. You are not going to change in one incarnation what you have been going through in hundreds of incarnations. Because you go from making mistakes and not really caring for it, not learning from your mistakes. That's the beginning, right? So you keep repeating the mistakes, and you keep aggravating your debts. Then once you start being brainwashed by the religious teachings that we are all going to hell if we don't behave ourselves, we continue making the mistakes because we are imperfect beings, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But now we start making the mistakes and feeling guilty about making them. And the feeling guilty is really what stays with us. And you see spirits coming into our mediumship meetings and talking about, I don't deserve to be helped. I don't deserve to be rescued. I don't deserve to be here, because we keep bringing this. So the idea of the positive repair of our mistakes and the positive building of the learning, it's very recent. Even if you say it's 200 years, it's nothing. 200 years, maybe you went through 2 incarnations. Most likely you are in the middle of the first one, or, you know, in the end of the first one. It's unlikely, but we may have been in the other one if we didn't last long. So it's all very recent, and it doesn't guarantee that you had these teachings in your previous incarnation, right? They say a lot of spiritists are born again. We're born again in Brazil, right? But not all of us. So it's an exercise that we have to do to look in the way that Paco just told us, to look at in a positive way, to look as an opportunity to learn and to active repair what we have done wrong. But this is not yet part of who we are. So we still have, we are still going to catch us blaming others for things that happen to us. And we'll do that. We are still doing that. Even if we know and understand on the rational side that in the end is our responsibility for our own mistakes, it's still not our first reaction. Our first reaction is to look for a guilty part outside of ourselves for our mistakes. And then, you know, this all brings this guilty conscience that it will take a while for us to overcome. But it's, you know, it's a work, an exercise. And when we look outside Spiritism and we look at of self-help groups and things like that, we'll see that a lot of the discussions and teachings there is really to deal with the guilty, right? To make us feel better about ourselves, to overcome our sense of inferiority within ourselves. So, you know, the truth is out there. They need to learn and to evolve through a reparation of our mistakes in a positive way is out there. But you know, we're still struggling. It's not something that we can do easily.
Yeah, we need a lot of help, right? And I think we are from mainly, not everybody in the group, but we can say some part of the group are in the range of a generation, and we didn't have all this available like my kids are having, or even a little bit older generation, because it's available, right? It doesn't need to be only spiritual, it's available. And at least the help is out there, right? It's when we were growing up, I think it was harder for us to get this kind of help and understanding to get free from the try to get the guilt a little bit, you know, sleep a little bit.
Yeah. That's and again, it's a sign that we are all evolving as a society, right? Things that we were normal 50 years ago are no longer acceptable, and things that are acceptable today will no longer be acceptable in 50 years. You know, it's again, we cannot we can guess some things, but most of the things, you know, there are some things that we thought they were pretty normal, and nowadays we look back and say, how could I think it was normal? So we are evolving. Society is evolving. We are learning from our mistakes, and also, you know, when we talk about atonements, we are talking here a lot of individual atonements, but we atone as a group also, as humankind atones, and cities and countries and regions and communities. There is the collective atonement that we have to go through. You know, a recent example, the tsunami that killed 300,000 people. This is a collective atonement. The pandemic that the whole world is going through, this is a collective atonement. For what? I don't know. One day we will understand. but we can guess, but it's not worth. We know that we are going through it. What can we learn from it? How can we evolve from it? And how we will understand one day. Like we understand nowadays we understand the Black Plague, right? The reason for it. The Black Plague killed between half and 2/3 of the European population when it happened, and you know, and the feudal system in Europe. But that's something that we'll discuss on Sunday, not today, when we are discussing On the Way to the Light. But anyway, okay, anyone else? Okay, so here now it's comments by Kardec himself after all these messages from these superior spirits.
Yeah. Okay. People are inspired to do good and avoid vices if they feel that this course of action will be rewarding one and keep them from being punished. However, if the threatened punishment appears under conditions that are contrary to reason, not only does it fail its goal, but it also leads people to reject everything, both the form and the basis. When the notion of a future is introduced in a rational way, people do not reject it. Spiritism provides this reasonable explanation. The principle of eternal punishment makes the Supreme Being a merciless and cruel God. Is it rational to say that a ruler is very kind, compassionate, and tolerant, and wants nothing but happiness to everyone when this ruler is jealous, vindictive, relentlessly severe, and punishes 3/4 of the subject with the most horrific torture for any offense or violations of the laws, even when the violations are the result of simple ignorance of the laws they violate? Is this not a blatant contradiction? Could God be less moral or virtuous than human beings? This doctrine has another contradiction. Since God knows all things, God must have known and created a spirit that it will disobey divine laws. Therefore, spirits must have been destined to eternal unhappiness and agony. Is this rational? With the principle of relative punishment, on the contrary, everything is justified. When God created a given spirit, undoubtedly it was known that it would do wrong. However, it was in God's design to provide the means for the spirit to become enlightened. The spirit must atone for its sins and make amends for its wrongdoings, so that it may be more firmly set in goodness. Therefore, the door to hope is never closed. And the moment when a spirit is delivered from suffering depends on the effort it channels into achieving its goal. This is something that all can understand and the most meticulous logic can accept. If the concept of future punishment were presented in this manner, there would be far fewer skeptics. We often use the word eternal figuratively to designate a long period with no fixed end, even though we know that the end, of course, comes at some point in time. For instance, there are the eternal snows of mountain peaks and polar ice caps. Although we know that our planet will end one day and the features of those regions may change due to the natural displacements of the Earth's axis or by some natural disaster. In this specific case, eternal does not signify that which is infinitely everlasting. When we are sick or suffer from a long-term illness, we say that our suffering is eternal. Is it strange then that for spirits who have suffered for years, centuries, or millennia to express themselves in the same manner? We must not forget that their inferiority prevents them from seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and they consequently think that they are destined to suffer forever. This belief is part of their atonement. We borrowed our belief in fire, burning orphans, and torture from the pagan Tartarus. This belief has been completely abandoned by many of the most eminent theologians today. Only in certain schools are such fear-mongering allegories still presented as literal truths by some individuals who are more overzealous than enlightened. This is all very wrong, because young imaginations, once past the terror, will most likely become skeptics. Currently, theology admits that the word fire is used figuratively in the Bible and is to be understood as meaning moral fire. People who have observed life and suffered beyond the grave, as communicating spirits explain it, understand how this suffering can be excruciating, although it is not of a physical nature. As for the duration of this suffering, many theologians are starting to acknowledge the restriction indicated above and think that the word eternal may refer to the principle of sorrow itself as a consequence of an absolute law and not its application to each individual. The day religion accepts this interpretation and other concepts as products of enlightenment, vast numbers of people who have been led astray will have their faith in God restored. Very good. Very good. I have a question. Question. Does the church, is the church sending me to hell forever still?
Until Judgment Day, right? Or Judgment Day is only those that are in purgatory. I'm not sure about that, to be very honest.
So if I come out and say that, well, you really did not live a good life. Wow. Okay. Okay.
You go to. Yeah, but the Pope Paul VI was the first one to recognize that heaven and hell are states of mind, right? So the church has been changing their definition of heaven and hell. And so here Kardec concludes by analyzing what was written, and and again he goes back to the principle of eternal punishment that makes God merciless and cruel, that it doesn't make sense, that it's a contradiction, that if God is less moral and virtuous than human beings. And in the end, what he's saying here is that if the church continues with this fixed ideas of eternal punishments, of heaven and hell, they'll continue lose believers. And that's, we see that continues to happen, right? People followed religion by fear mostly, and in the past, Middle Ages, beginning of Christianity, and without really understanding. The masses were said in Latin. Most people didn't speak Latin, so it was really the idea of punishment that
I remember.
That controlled everybody. And as we grow and we start to reason, all these ideas stop making sense. And when they stop making sense, what happens? Either we go looking for different ideas, or start looking for different answers and looking for different philosophies, or we just give up and decide to take care of our material lives without paying any attention to the spiritual side, which many people also do. So what Kardec is telling us here is that when people start understanding that the idea of relative punishment, meaning punishing according to the intention and the seriousness of the mistake, and the punishment that comes from ourselves, when everybody starts understanding this, you will bring people closer to God, because you bring people closer to understanding ourselves as spirit, eternal spirits, and the Creator as being someone that started everything. Everything started with and continues to be with perfection from the Creator. But when we look around and we see injustices, and we don't understand why this injustice happens, and we think about living only one life, how can a just God exists if we see so many injustices around us? And I fully agree with those people that do not understand or do not accept a God that will allow so many injustices to happen. So until we understand our nature as eternal spirits, the need of learning from our mistakes and evolving on both the moral and spiritual and knowledge, and the wings of moral and knowledge, it will be very hard for us to fully accept the Creator as the Creator is, right? We discussed the notion of God is discussed in this first edition of the Review Spirit that the International Spiritist Council published. And for those, I read the articles. They are very good articles there. I really recommend, if you can, to read. God as it is understood by Spiritism, God that makes sense to us, even if we don't fully understand God, because of course we can't, we are too imperfect to fully understand God, but to accept God as the Creator, as something superior and the origin of everything, and that everything is that God does is all just and all goodness, it makes everything more reasonable, and everything starts to make more sense to us. Then Kardec discusses the notion of eternity, right? And the example he uses is a very good one when we talk about the eternal snows, right? We talk about this, the ice in the polar are eternal ices. Are they really eternal? Well, if Earth will cease to exist in 5 billion years, then they are not eternal, because 5 billion years is not eternity. And or some natural disaster. So we start to relativize the idea of eternal, and he goes and say, when the sick are suffering from long-term illness, it appears eternal. And we see spirits that are suffering in the spiritual world telling us that they're suffering eternally. And of course, when we are going through some difficulty, we think that is eternal. And then he talks a little bit about the belief in hell that we have, which is in fire, burning ovens, and torture that comes from Tartarus. And Tartarus comes from the Greek mythology, which is the deep abyss that is used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for those that are wicked. And it's a place where souls are judged after death, and where the wicked receive divine punishment. You see that the Greeks had a pretty decent idea of our suffering in the spiritual world. They just thought it was a physical place, right? But it's interesting that they also consider Tartarus to be a primordial force, or deity alongside earth, night, and time. So when the Romans that appropriated everything and took everything from the Greek mythology and updated, they described Tartarus as a place where the enemies of the gods are sent, and is a place surrounded by a flaming river and triple walls to prevent everyone to escape. So it's all the beliefs that the antique from antiquity, but it was a physical place, and again, hell at the time in the Greek mythology is Hades, and Tartarus is actually below Hades. So it's the lower zones below the lower zones, if we are going to use spiritism as references in spiritism. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting that he brings this, where we bring the belief in fire and burning ovens. It's interesting for us to learn, right? And of course, he says that belief has been abandoned by theologians, and because it doesn't make sense to be in eternal fire or things like that. So he ends up saying that for those that had communicated with spirits, understand the suffering from the spirits and can be excruciating, despite not being of a physical nature. And that's something we discussed also, right, when we were discussing atonements. The suffering in the spiritual world is everything is in the mind. The spirit may feel that it's of physical effects, but it's really everything is in the mind, is consequence of our own doing. And the duration, it's as long as we don't work on repairing. So he finishes by saying the day that religion accepts this interpretation and other concepts, the large number of people who have been led astray will have their faith in God restored. And he doesn't say here will come back to the church, but will have their faith in God restored, which I think it's very interesting also. Okay? Comments, questions? Daniela, Dani.
I have a question. It might be a little bit weird, but we know that our thoughts create what our reality in a way, right? Yeah. So that's a material thing, a physical thing, right? The thoughts,
it's material.
Is material,
not physical, so, material.
So material. So from these two wings, the moral side and the science or the knowledge, knowing that put us on which wing of growth? Like knowing that the knowledge, so not the moral, right?
The moral is when the knowing becomes part of who you are.
So knowing that might put us to face the moral, our moral side, or the way we interact. So, but the knowing of that is on the other wing, right? Because
the knowing is on the knowledge side.
Part of this, it's a part of a science, or it can be proven somehow. Okay.
So let's think of the kicking the dog example that Elmo gave some weeks ago, right? Which is a very simple example, right? So first you kick the dog and you don't care. You have no knowledge, you have no moral evolution. Now, once you recognize for some different reasons, maybe learning, maybe seeing the dog suffering, that you should not kick the dog, that's the knowledge, right? It goes to your knowledge evolution. You evolved on the intellectual side when you learned that it's not the right, to mistreat animals is not the right thing to do. But has it become part of who you are? Well, so the next time that the dog crosses in front of you and you are angry, does the thought, the intention, or the impulse to kick the dog still exists? If it still exists, it hasn't become the moral aspect of your evolution yet. That if it only becomes the moral aspect when you know, the dog can come at barking at you, attacking you, and you are not going to kick the dog. You're going to defend yourself, try to avoid harm, but you're not going to attack the dog back or things like that, because you know it's, you know, it's inside of you, you know it's not right, so you are not doing it. The famous Mother Teresa story that you know, the journalist that was interviewing her, and then she starts running through the streets and go there and rescue this man that was dying in the middle of the garbage, and she puts the man in her arms, and the man dies, and the journalist barely standing there, the smell and the horrific scene, says, I couldn't do that for $1 million. And she answered, neither could I, only for love, because it's who she is. He knows what she did was right, but he couldn't do it. So it's not part of him. She does it because it's who she is. You see the difference, the knowledge and the moral difference. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? You know, we're leaving resurrection of the body for next week because it's an interesting subject, and it has only a couple of questions there, and but there is a lot to talk about it. We are going to discuss resurrection and reincarnation, and the concept of reincarnation, and it's you know, it's a good opportunity for us to go beyond the concept of resurrection and reincarnation as we understand today, but to understand a little bit better how other religions deal with resurrection and reincarnation. So I already did some research, and I found some interesting notes on resurrection, the concept of resurrection in the Jewish beliefs, in the Christian beliefs, and in the Muslim beliefs. So I'm going to bring to you next week.
Wow, and I'm going to miss that.
Yeah, no. It's very. Sorry. Well, Paco, you can always watch later on
that's
YouTube.
Right. I could always watch. That's true. You know, that's true. I can always watch it. Yes.
So, so I don't know if anyone has any other questions. We have still 5 minutes to go. Otherwise, we can do the final prayer here, and we'll start the study of the Medium's book. So, okay. So what do we have for this weekend? This Saturday we have a very good lecture, right? Our friend Dan Assisi, and most of you know him from the symposiums, from the lectures.
He's from LA.
Yes, he's from LA, from San Diego, and he has been in our center giving a lecture, and he's a very good lecturer. So he's going to present a new commandment from selfishness to selflessness. This is the talk that he's going to give this Saturday at 11 a.m. Through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube or Facebook, or through the International Spiritist Council YouTube, which is TVSA YouTube. Okay, so this Saturday at 11 a.m. This Sunday, we're going to study On the Way to the Light, and we mentioned a little bit that we're going to talk about the feudal system and the barbarian invasions and the destruction of the Roman Empire. It's a very interesting historical study that we're going to go through this Sunday. And the following Sunday, on the 25th, we're going to have Tanya Stevanin, and she's going to give a lecture called Choice. For those that have seen her give the lecture in the United States Spirit Federation, she's a biologist, a scientist, and she covers the subjects in a very interesting way. So that will be a very interesting discussion. Sunday the 25th, not this Sunday, next Sunday, okay? All right, Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you, John. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together this evening for the study of the Spirit's book. We have delved into the duration of future atonements, and we know that we are always progressing. We are always moving forward. We are making amends each life. We are able to make the resources useful to our progress. We know that the goodness of knowledge, love, and justice are very, very helpful to our ongoing progress. May we use this time, endeavor to do so each day as we are able to do so. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, the protector spirits, the good spirits, all those who are assisting us. We give thanks and gratitude. We know that we are being inspired as we do our part. They are inspiring us to use our heart and to use our mind. The wings of goodness, the wings of intellect, may we do this with the goodness in our hearts each day. As we go forth, may we continue to do our lessons, our studies, our mindfulness each day. And may we bring this to others as they are able to receive and as we are able to impart. We are blessed beyond belief, and during this time, we especially need to bring kindness, greater compassion, and the resourcefulness to bring together to each other. May we continue to be blessed, and may we go forward this evening in safety and protection, guided into a wisdom, into a better knowledge of the Spiritist doctrine we hold so dear. We close now and ask to become beacons of light. May we go forth now in peace. Go forth now. So be it.